You already know who I am. I'm Tom Lowe. And the reason I'm sitting here with Judy Baar Topinka is that both of us have a long experience in state government and politics. I don't know exactly how to introduce you because you're a friend, you're a...
Beautiful, brilliant.
Well, there you go.
All those throwaway lines.
You're a raconteur, if I pronounce that correctly, a great storyteller. Anyway, she has, in addition to all of that, Judy has, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because I took this right off the web or somewhere.
You're not going to read all that.
I'm not going to read it all, no, but I am going to say that Judy earned a BS in journalism at Medill from Northwestern. So she is a fellow scribe. We're all in this together. She knows what you're doing and what you're about. Yes, you were.
I was the first statewide woman official to be reelected.
That's what I meant.
You know, who came back for a second time around.
That's what I meant.
I think it's kind of interesting to have been the first woman treasurer elected and the first Republican to be elected treasurer in 32 years, which I thought was kind of most interesting. And then in the following year, because everybody thought that was a fluke, all the Republicans lost and I was the only one left standing.
That's right.
So, you know, that was,
and then,
so we just kept it up for 3 times around and turned that office into a really, really neat office.
And to bring you, following on that.
Well, I had the money. You know, you could do things and you could stop the governor from doing strange things. All right.
Speaking of governors.
Yes.
You did decide to take on Blagojevich.
Yes.
Why don't we start there? Could you just tell us just a little bit about why you decided to run and then tell us a little bit about the whole campaign and anything else that strikes you about that particular thing? Blagojevich is going to give us the state of the state
yes,
in a week. So
the
tell us
state
about
of the
that.
dysfunction. But, you know, I decided, actually I was quite happy when Rod Blagojevich won, because I had supported Jim Ryan, who I thought would have been a better, more honest. I mean, I knew the man very well, and he would have been a great governor. But when Blagojevich won, and I called him and said, look, you know, I may be Republican, but I believe in working together, and we get the job done, and I want you to be good. I want you to be successful, because if you're successful, we'll all be successful. And you're young, you can have some ideas, you'll bring some new blood. If I can be of help to you, just give me a call. But don't start doing silly, stupid things with money. I said, because if you start doing silly, stupid things with money, remember, I'm the treasurer, and I'm going to call you on it. And so it goes. He never called me. We never really exchanged any type of verbiage after that, up until such time as I was sworn in again for another 4 years. There was no communication coming from his office. But then I guess, you know, the lieutenant governor says the same thing and other office holders say the same thing, so I don't feel like I'm being singled out. By that time, he had started skimming off of pension funds and charging departments for their existence, and there was some question in terms of the people he was hiring and where they were coming from. You can read about them, assuming that as good journalists you're still reading newspapers, which most people your age are not. And you know, then you can see where some of those jobs may have come from, and the allegations that are out there by the U.S. Attorney and Public Official A and all those wonderful things. And I'd had enough, because I start where you start. And I started, you know, working on a suburban newspaper, which started at Cicero on the west and went into DuPage County. And when you politic or you do journalism in Cicero, you learn a lot fast. And I didn't like corruption. And so there it was, and I thought, you know, the state is not on a good course. We've got that treasurer's office working very well. Since the economy and money are going to be a major problem here, I'm very equipped to be able to do this, and I don't have any scandal. I mean, all I ever did was just work and try and do public service. 4 years in the House, 10 years in the Senate, 12 years now in the treasurer's office. And so running for governor seemed to be the logical thing to do. And so I went. I had a very miserable primary with a lot of folks who had a lot of money, you know, and you know, so I can sympathize with those folks who are out there now running for president, except on a lesser level. They must be very tired. I was tired after 102 counties. I can't imagine what they're doing with 50 states. But got through that, and now was the first woman in the Republican Party to be the standard bearer for the Republican Party, and had many commitments of money from people like the Republican Governors Association, which was headed up by the late contender Mitt Romney, who used the money for himself and did not get it to me, nor to others who were running for governor. And so I'm really kind of happy John McCain is there, frankly. And you know, then also too, you know, people like Karl Rove, the White House, which said that they would give me money, which never came. But then Karl Rove wound up with problems of his own about that time. And then we had the Chicago business community, which is always, you know, bellyaching about how state government and everybody else is treating them, and they're the ones that write the big checks. And I guess I wasn't wearing the same gray suits that they were wearing, because those big checks never came. And meanwhile, we had Blagojevich out there making money hand over fist to the tune of $40-some million. Okay, again, I think we can question where some of that money came from, which I think the U.S. Attorney is doing. But you know, when you can, in a fundraiser, net $4 million in a night at the Field Museum, and we're out there begging with a tin cup, that's a little hard. So ultimately, he if you saw those commercials on TV, What Is She Thinking, where he had very high-priced talent from Washington, all that, that was $27 million worth right there, just that TV buy. That kept coming at me, and it was very clever, and it was very bright, because he proceeded to try and define me as George Ryan's love child, and did. And so between the two Georges, you had George Bush's unpopularity on one side coming back down, and you had George Ryan on the other side, where I was being made to be George Ryan's unique treasurer. Nobody else, was just his, which is not the case at all. And then, you know, miscellaneous other things that he had people following me around the whole state with the camera. And so they would take all these pictures right in your face. I mean, to the point where we had journalists who would ask these folks, could you just at least get out of the way for a while? You know, because you'd be talking to someone here, and you'd have this person here with the camera right here. And that's the kind of funny pictures you see. I still have people who tell me, well, you look better now than you did on TV. And I say, well, yeah, I'm not spliced anymore, you know? So, you know, you had that going on. And I think $27 million is more than all of the presidential candidates dumped into the Iowa primaries. And this was just all coming at me. The most we were able to put together was about $11,000, or $11 million rather. And the fact that we're talking about those kind of millions for a gubernatorial campaign, the fact that we're talking about billions now for presidential campaigns, should alert you as journalists that these campaigns are getting to be ever more not about merit, and not about potential, and not about ideas, but about money. The candidate who has the greatest amount of money traditionally will win, unless there are other dynamics that are present, like more candidates who split the vote, or things of that sort. Maybe a 9/11 comes down, something that is meteoric that comes down and changes it. But by and large, if it's going to be a normal election, money will tell. And ultimately, he beat me. We won, and I think this is little known because it hasn't been covered, 72 out of 102 counties. We won, still being outspent 4-1. In Springfield alone, it was almost a 70% vote in my favor, because in Springfield, they know this guy. They know him well. Here we don't hear about Springfield because our press, by and large, covers it really kind of sporadically. Our press in Chicago covers Congress, covers the Chicago City Council, it certainly covers the presidential campaign, but state government is something that's kind of removed. Even county government, I think possibly because the emergence of Todd Stroger and, you know, some of the stupidities that are coming through on that front are getting some headlines. But by and large, state government, 3.5 hours removed by car from us. It's some forgotten land somewhere down there. People who are reps and senators are kind of forgotten. Governors, for all intents and purposes, are basically forgotten, except for Blagojevich, who likes his photo ops and will have a photo op at the drop of a hat. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So this is where we sit, and I think if people are to be believed who come up to me on the street and say, you know, if we had it to do again, you know, we would do it this way, or the traditional, you know, I voted for you. Well, if everybody who tells me voted for me, I'd be governor today. So you know, they just don't want to hurt my feelings, is what it is. You know, why did I lose? Money was the predominating reason. I should have won. My numbers were good, but the reputation was good. His was already tarnished. He isn't just recently public official A. He was public official A when I ran. And that was put forward, but it wasn't hammered home enough by the press. But then I say, press, is anybody reading you? Is the public really reading you or watching you on TV or listening to you on the radio? Are they really listening, or are they just getting that last 2 weeks right before the election where it's on TV, the paid ads, which are scripted, they're slick, they're nice, and this is how they find out about a candidate. In that nice slick ad where you're being fed platitudes. We see it in the presidential campaign. The platitudes are so deep you could cut through them with a knife. But there they are. Is it telling the public what is happening, which may be of no interest to them, or is it telling the public what they want to hear? It's all good. Look what I did for you. I'm nice. My hair is nice, the whole bit. And so there you go. Was it also a question of being female? Yeah, I think it was. I think Hillary Clinton's getting somewhat of the same thing now. I can sympathize with her. That that racism still is something that people will have gotten over, but sexism not. Still there, still there. I still have people who tell me, well, I just don't know if we could have a female governor. It's like, my gosh, we've got women running whole countries. But, still a concern on that. So, we have all of that. So there were some interesting dynamics to the race. I think it opened the door to a lot of people. It opened the door to a lot of, I think, minorities who might not have considered running. The fact that we did so well in spite of, I think, tells me that, and should tell the Republican Party, that if you want to be successful, it's social moderates and fiscal conservatives who win, not right-wing, off-the-map extremists, just as we should tell the Democratic Party, not left-wing extremists should win. Most people are in the middle, either to the right of center, as I am, or to the left of center, as many Democrats are. But ultimately, people are around the center, and they want decent, solid government that gets the job done, but they want to feel good about it. And they're in, how do we do it? We put it in ads. So if you're in an advertising curriculum, I think you're probably fine. If you're in a journalism one, we have a ways to go. That's my story.
Judy, tell me just a little bit more about the sexism. I've not heard it before. I certainly believe it's true, but like, what do people say what have they said to you that has them justified?
Well, first of all, let me tell you what I read in the papers, because I love to read the papers. I try and read 4 papers every day, and I just love my newspaper. I start my day that way. It was always noted I wore sensible shoes. You know what? So did Rod Blagojevich, but I don't think we ever heard about those. All right? And then I heard about my red hair. Which frankly will change color from time to time depending upon what time of the month you get it. Okay, that's just the fact that either the hair was too short, the hair was too long, the hair was too red, the hair was not red enough. That type of thing. Then I heard about makeup, too much, too little, too colorful. Gee, you gave a great concession speech, but I must admit I was a little bit taken aback by what was the green eyeshadow. That came from a woman writer. Okay, it wasn't the male writers who wrote those things. They were women writers. And they continued to do it, and I see them doing it with Hillary Clinton. Do you recall the Hillary Clinton? Hillary had cleavage. I saw the picture. You couldn't see anything, for gosh sakes. Just a little bitty bit here at the top, and the world came to an end. You would have thought she was running nude through the Capitol on Pennsylvania Avenue. All right? This is ridiculous in terms of who's doing her hair. She didn't do her hair. Let's dig out those old pictures of her with the headband. It's those type of things that come. I had folks in an ethnic community that I won't mention, whom I thought would be supportive, and the women said, well, the men in our community, they get a little concerned about women at the helm. That's just a little too powerful. They don't like that. And furthermore, you don't have a family. I don't have a family. My daughter-in-law is right out there. Christina is right out there. I adore her. She was here today with me. But you didn't see my family because my son is in the Army. And the Army by law says you cannot campaign for anybody. And my son is an ethics officer. And he believes in ethics, as do I. And he would be there kind of for the finales, but he could not, by law, campaign during the time. Not to mention, He is not living here. He's all over the map. My daughter-in-law came in to be with me, but he's being sent to various places. They're living at a fort. You know, I don't have, kind of like Mitt Romney, 5 sons who never served anywhere, by the way, you know, standing behind me, and you know, some adoring Nancy Reagan-esque type wife going, looking how wonderful I am, you know, and I don't have that. But it's more of an ordinary family that we see today, you know, and it's a good family. But hearing things like that, guys don't hear that. I would hear about I didn't wear enough skirts. You know, I must have pantsuits for every occasion. I've heard that with Hillary Clinton as well. She's got nothing but pantsuits. Frankly, it's winter outside, okay? All right, my legs are cold. I wear pantsuits because they're very practical. I wear sensible shoes because I have foot problems that have been operated on, and so there's a reason for it. I try to get my hair in order, but it has a mind of its own. And it depends on which way the hair dryer blows it in the morning, okay? I mean, that's just the way it's gonna be. And I'd like to think that we're working on state issues, but it was more of a personality thing. Look at that wonderful hair that Rod Blagojevich has. Look at those lovely little children that he holds between him and the press. Okay, literally physically holds them and says, "You made my daughter cry, don't ask me questions." Cool. I might try that with my Scotty dog. Don't ask me questions, you're upsetting my dog, okay? You know, things of that sort. So, you know, that never came up. And so I think it's there, and I think it permeates. It still permeates our society, and we have not gotten to the point, as other nations have gotten, where there are women leading full-fledged governments, not states, not regions, not mayors, full-fledged governments, and doing quite well. Certainly have reached equality in that they're no brighter than the average guy, and they're no stupider than the average guy. That's equality when we are as equal as the dumbest fellow, and we are. So that's fine.
You know that in the news lately, we were hearing that there's still a $750 million hole in the current budget, and we're not even looking forward to the next fiscal year. If you were governor, there were those kind of problems that would have faced you. Where do we go? And what would you do to try to solve some of these problems, these fiscal financial problems?
Well, actually, we had a whole game plan that we put together, including the budget, pension funds, things of that sort. I mean, we had position papers on all of these problems, including transportation, by the way. So none of this business with the CTA and whatever would have come up had you used my plan. I mean, there'd be a problem, but you took care of the problem, and this is how you took care of the problem, this is how you made it happen, and we would have had it done by May 31st, which was the deadline for the legislature, tucked everybody back in, you know, to their little districts, and not lost $1 million in special sessions that accomplished nothing and got us to where we got now. By the way, I'm on the RTA board, so I get to watch when the wheels come off the buses now. That's part of my, you know, my latest entree in government. But we had ideas on how you could solve the state's fiscal problem. First of all, you know, and this is all so basic, but the public doesn't want to hear it, yet in their own lives, they are ruled by it. That is, you don't spend what you don't have. Mm-hmm. Okay? You cannot keep spending without bringing money in. I mean, that's just common sense logic. So we had certain curtailments in terms of where we would stop the spending, how we would get new monies in, what we would do for investment purposes so that we could work it out. Now today I noticed that the controller is saying, of course the controller wants to be governor now, so keep that. Everybody has an agenda. In Chicago and Illinois politics, whatever you read, everybody has an agenda. So you always have to see behind whatever you're reading. And so that, he says we're $750 million in the hole now. Even with the governor's broadcast arm that says what we're going to get in, which is roughly around $800 million, and there's some dispute that it would even be that high, and the treasurer is saying the investments, because of low interest rates, are not going to be great. There isn't going to be any money just for the $750 million. What the story doesn't tell you, and should be in the story, is how our unfunded pension liability is out there. We have 5 pension funds, and most of them are funded at about the 45% mark. By constitutional law, we have to pay those pension funds. And somewhere along the line, there's a day of reckoning because they have to be paid. And yet, you know, the governor is skimming off of them, and they're not being invested properly. And you've got a group of retirees coming with the baby boomers, and you've got all of this hitting at the same time, plus an economy that if it's not in recession, it's on the verge of, and depending upon if you've been laid off, then it is recession. It's depression if you got laid off. So here we sit, and there is no game plan. There is no game plan whatsoever except the same old tired things that the governor has attempted to do in the past, which are, there's loopholes for business, and we need to tax software and things of this sort. Oh, let's have gambling. Oh, let's tax cigarettes. When in doubt, tax cigarettes. You can't tax cigarettes anymore, for gosh sakes. The person, and I say this now in my 17th week of not smoking. All right? But like an alcoholic, I think you always have to declare yourself a smoker. So I'm declaring myself a smoker even though I've been off. And that is, you cannot keep expecting the ever declining smoking public to be able to keep aloft the whole social service network for the state of Illinois, or for the city of Chicago, or for the county, or all of the above at the same time. When you're probably paying more taxes than, you might as well grow your own in the backyard and turn to corn silks. I don't know. I mean, this is, and you have a declining, volatile flow of money to begin with. Gambling, the same thing. How many gambling casinos do you want to put in here before you've turned Illinois into a casino? What we said was put in the 10th license. If you have to create an 11th till the 10th is settled in court, but that you have what the legislature said you could have, 10 licenses. Give it to Chicago. Chicago needs a really good casino. Not a boat. Cut the boat garbage. These boats never leave the dock. This is stupid. Quit putting them into a boat. Make it a world-class casino, as most world-class cities have. There you're getting tourists. It's not your own people. You're providing new monies. But the idea that you have to have a casino somewhere in the Waukegan area, you have to have a casino somewhere in the south suburbs, which are the poorest suburbs you'll find. The poverty level is so huge, you're just recycling the public aid dollar. And then maybe one at O'Hare, and then one in Chicago, and let's put slot machines at the racetracks, and can video poker be far behind? And we've already got the lottery, and we've got off-track betting and horse racing, and why not let's declare us Las Vegas and skip the Olympics, okay? Just go right for the jugular, the gambling jugular. We can't compete. This is cannibalizing. So the 10th license would have done it. Pay our bills first. First, you pay the bills before you start with any grandiose ideas. That the public found dull. As one of my staff people said, you sound like an old school marm. For God's sakes, pay the bills. Oh, how dull. It wasn't some grandiose scheme. We're going to send children to the moon and start a daycare center. No. We were going to pay our bills and get the state in order and get it stabilized. And then you can start competing with the rest of the world. And we are competing with the world economy now. We haven't even begun to do that. This state is so dysfunctional now. I wake up in the morning and I read the paper and my blood pressure goes up and I just have to stop because it just makes me so angry and there's nothing I can do about it. And it's upsetting. It's upsetting to see it. It's upsetting to see the people undefended and not knowing what's going on.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then
we can ask that.
I'm going to let these guys become journalists, pretend they're in the State House press room. Where do you see the next Republican gubernatorial candidate coming from? How does the party rebuild on a statewide basis? What is your sense about how that's going, or is it going in the right direction, et cetera, et cetera?
The Republican Party needs some help at this point. Having been state chairman, I can tell you it's very difficult because the party still has a very strong element of the right wing controlling it. There's nothing wrong with many conservative principles, but this goes beyond conservative. And there's no desire for compromise, and there's almost a death wish that says if you don't do it my way, then we're not going to play. And then we will not support you. We will stay home.
And it's happening at the federal level too.
Yes,
right now.
And I worry about John McCain for just that reason. Will that group that doesn't find him pure enough, on whose definition? That's on top of it. What is this purity? None of us were running for sainthood. We're running for office to just get the job done. So I worry about that straight across the board. Again, I think America, certainly Illinois, is right of center. When I see all the counties that I carried, they were perfectly fine with this right of center. They could understand the practicality. We have those, who would not. So our state central committee is going to have to try and move forward and find candidates that do have a more moderate social calendar here and are fiscally conservative. That not only sells in Illinois, it's good for Illinois. It gets the job done. Who's going to run? I think you're going to see this cast of characters. There's one that I find that's going to be particularly interesting, and that would be Jim Oberweis. He's the candidate who's running for, well, he's run for just about everything, but he's running for Congress now in the Denny Hastert district. He has apparently told people that he would just be a one-termer because he's going to come back and run again for governor. So he will be there. I think you'll see the others who ran against me in the primary there. You might see a few others. You might see Tom Cross emerge, who's the minority leader of the House, who in this dysfunction that was going on in the state between Governor Blagojevich and Speaker Madigan, where the two will not even be in the same room. Minority Leader Cross served as the Henry Kissinger kind of going back and forth with shuttle diplomacy so the notes would get passed. So I mean, you see people we have maybe not even heard of yet who will be coming forward to run. On the Democratic side, will Lisa Madigan run? She could probably take Blagojevich out. Will the Democratic Party, try and take this guy out because they're having difficulty dealing with him? The legislature is not able to work with the governor. They don't see him. He doesn't go to Springfield. He just flies around in the airplane, at $6,000 a pop. So, are they going to put people up? Dan Hines would like to run. If Barack Obama loses, would he come back and run? That's a possibility. So the speculation is wide open on who and where and how. Or will the U.S. Attorney enter into this and change the dynamics again? And we have yet to see where that will go.
Questions?
Anybody? Yes, sir.
Tom.
Now you got to talk really loud. I have bad ears.
What about yourself? Would you consider another run?
Good question.
What about myself? Another run? I don't think so. I never say never, because in politics, never is just a crazy word. But I don't think so. Because if the same folks would not be supportive as were the last time, why go through the motions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned the high cost of elections.
Ah.
All right. Well, locally, a lot of money was just spent on the smaller elections, and then with the state's attorney's race, a lot of money was spent, and a major issue was gun control. With the recent Tinsley Park shootings, do you think gun control is going to be front and center and be a major issue in next year's general election?
Well, I think gun control always comes up because it's an easy target. I'm not trying to make a pun out of it, but it's an easy target. From a standpoint of Illinois will by and large never go for gun control. I mean, there are certain tangential gun issues that may be taken care of, but by and large, I think folks here in Illinois, especially as you get outside of Chicago, the Chicagoland area, are very touchy about the right to own a gun and so on, and the Second Amendment. I know from a personal standpoint, I feel very strongly about that. That may be my Eastern European roots. Because I know the first thing the Nazis did when they came in was get the list, get the guns, and get the law-abiding gun owners up against the wall. And bad people are the ones who cause the problem with guns. Good people get FOID cards, they register, they know how to shoot, and they by and large don't go around shooting people. So I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue, except it's always good in a debate. You can always throw something out, try and trip somebody up, but it doesn't go anywhere. Yes?
Let's go here first. Then
John McCain.
And could I ask a follow-up? What is your take on Huckabee? And does he have a chance? Why is he still in the race?
Huckabee, I think, has certain areas of the country that respond to him, usually with very areas that have big evangelical populations from various denominations. And, now some of the things he says, I think are good. Now, having said that, there's a whole bunch of conservatives that don't like Huckabee because he raised taxes in Arkansas and he did things that he said he wouldn't do and so on. I think Huckabee at this point is bucking to be vice president in a potential McCain administration. Whether that occurs or not, I think is rather doubtful, but it's, anything is possible as John McCain reaches back and tries to get more right-wingers back on board his little boat. Frankly, if I were advising John McCain, I'd say, guy, they're not going to vote for you anyway. Leave them be. Don't lose the independents, and the Reagan Democrats will cross over, and you'll be far better off. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to let you do that.
I just read today, actually, in the Tribune, and I believe, I just read it a couple minutes ago, but Joe Burkett announced today that he was pushing Governor Blagojevich to reinstate the death penalty.
We said that in our campaign, too.
Right, so what are your thoughts about the death penalty? Do you think it should be, right now it's kind of in the middle, it's not being used, the death penalty right now, but moratorium.
Yeah, George Ryan put a moratorium on it, and basically Governor Blagojevich, not wanting to take a side in what could be a controversial issue, won't move on it.
Okay.
Joe Burkett and I were both strongly for the death penalty because we think there are crimes, and God knows he's a prosecutor. He has seen it firsthand, and he's seen some doozies. There are just crimes that are so heinous that these folks just ought not to be in society. I mean, you put down a mad dog on it, you put down somebody like that as far as I'm concerned. What we said was, legislature, you've been asking that the moratorium be lifted, force the issue. We need to get the governor off the dime. Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. You want to do a referendum on it? I don't care how but do it. You just can't let these people hanging out there because then it becomes cruel and unusual punishment. And that's exactly what it is. We have these people on death row just hanging there. I mean, what good is a judge giving a death sentence if it's never going to be carried out, or if it's going to take millions of dollars to adjudicate? It either is or it isn't. So move on it. And we were both very strong about that in the campaign, just to get it done one way or another.
Agnes.
Can you give me a sense of what transportation looks like for the coming year? Since we're going through such a budget crisis, and then you serve on the RTA, and then are there any green initiatives coming out of? Is there anything that you see that's new in terms of green initiatives for transportation?
You worried about your bus? Somebody's going to get you to school? Yeah, you should be. What was finally passed by the legislature, first of all, I disagree very, very much with that last minute thing, that the monkey wrench that the governor threw into it on free rides for senior citizens. Now, there are some seniors who need a free ride, and by all means, the disabled who need a free ride, the military who needs a free ride, or a discount. Right now, most of them had discounts. But to just arbitrarily lift $30 million out to make yourself look good so you'll be in your first campaign commercial saying, I went out and did this, for seniors who don't need it, when there are people who do, and with the transportation system, which has been left fallow for so many years, now you can't even fix it as much as you have to replace whole parts. It's like a house. If you don't keep the house up, pretty soon you're putting on a new roof, pretty soon you're putting on new bricks, pretty soon, it's more costly. And right now we've got buses out there with CTA that are 150,000 miles on it. They're being held together by baling wire and bubble gum. You've got track for the L that needs to get fixed because they slow up or they'll flip over. We have viaducts that can't be repaired anymore. They have to be rebuilt. I'm guessing somewhere around $15 to $20 million just a viaduct. You're talking big money. And that was not covered in this bill. What you were covering in this bill were operations, pension funds, things of this sort. You did not buy one new bus with it. So the RTA is already sending out, the word, well, we're going to have to talk about, a capital bill. Well, you could have a capital bill from Springfield, but we haven't had a capital bill in Springfield for close to 8 years. Why? Because the legislature doesn't trust the governor, so we don't have a capital bill there. We've got $1.5 billion waiting for us that Denny Hastert got from the federal government, which could help on this front.
Judy, could you explain what a capital bill is?
A capital bill is I'm sorry. A capital bill is streets and buildings and roadways and schools and things of a more permanent nature. It's not paying for salaries or pension funds or the soft stuff. It's bricks and mortar type things. So we've got 1.5 billion waiting that can be used for public transit, among other transportation issues on the federal level, but we have to come up with matching funds. No money. Eventually that will go to another state. We will lose it. So here we sit, state won't participate for that reason, can't get the federal government. What are we going to do locally? And already the RTA is coming up with, well, let's tax cigarettes. No, I'm not going to vote for that. If you need every vote, I'm not going to vote for that. Because I think you've taken that tax to its lowest denominator. It won't work anymore. You've killed it. You're going to have to find some other way. And now they're going to start working on some of the reforms that were in this and it was a pretty good bill. There's some good stuff in that bill that got passed. And hats off to Representative Julie Hamas for hanging in there for almost 3 years to get it done. And a lot of reforms which give the RTA more power as opposed to just being a eunuch of an agency and a pass-through for money to PACE and to Metra and to the CTA. I do give Ron Huberman some credit. I think he's the real deal. I think he really and truly is trying to get the CTA into some kind of order. I like working with him. PACE and Metra, I've got to develop more of a relationship with to get that feeling. But know that there are probably some other taxes coming down the road to do the capital part of that program.
Tom? Oh, I'm sorry.
Any green initiatives that you know
Environmental?
that the RTA would support, or anything, I don't know, anything environmentally conscious or?
I think at this point the RTA is just trying to keep body and soul together with the 3 service boards and to make sure that transportation continues to run, especially if we indeed wind up with the Olympics, which I just don't even know how we could deal with that from a standpoint of public transportation. And I've been very open about that. I mean, this is a great idea, but I just don't know how you're going to move people if you don't make that investment into the buses, the trains, the rails, the railroad ties, the viaducts, all those things, because regionally, this is our bread and butter. I mean, we move things here in Northern Illinois. Things come and go. Exports, imports, things are moving. If we can't move people and get them to their jobs, to school, to medical appointments, then we've lost our edge. And Illinois will be hurt. The whole state will be hurt.
Tom?
I have a couple of questions about
Sure.
George Ryan.
Could you speak up, please, just to make sure that
Did you
we can hear?
agree with the prosecution of him?
Did I agree with the prosecution of George Ryan? I could only agree with what I saw in the paper, and I mean, I don't think any of us who weren't close to that situation realized that it was going on. I mean, every one of us is elected independently. So as a result, we don't work as a cabinet as such. We don't meet with the governor around a table and you get an idea of what's going on. I was personally offended when I found when he was a judge that he was taking bribes and skimmed off money out of the Phil Gramm campaign for his children when Phil Gramm ran for president, things like that. And you just don't see that going on, because what we saw of George Ryan was a very good, kind man who was very helpful to people on the street. I mean, there wasn't a person I don't think he tried not to help. And yet you see this other side of George Ryan. I mean, 18 counts is a lot of counts. So I do think that our governors should pay attention to what went on with George Ryan, because he can see that what kind of badnesses were out there.
And when was the last time you actually spoke to him?
To George Ryan?
And could you tell us what the conversation was?
Golly, I don't even remember the last time I spoke to George Ryan. It was, you know what? It was about maybe 2 years ago, and he called me and he wanted to know, I believe, if I could recommend a dentist or something like that. It had nothing to do with government whatsoever. It had nothing. It was something like that, or he knew a dentist. And
it's funny you should say that, because when I was a State House reporter, he used to fly state planes home to see his dentist, and that is a true story. And a few little
Well,
stories
this was
written
for
about
a friend. It wasn't even for him. He
Okay.
was doing it for somebody else.
Okay.
And it was like that, or a dentist he was dealing with who had not gotten paid, and could I call the controller and see what went wrong with the check or something like this. But I mean, it was for somebody else. It had nothing to do, it was
Yeah.
what I would call a constituent call. Yeah.
I see a hand in the back.
Could you talk really loud for me, please?
I'm sorry. Illinois Housing Department has created a new, well, there was a bill passed last year and it's going to go into effect this year where people who are low income are able to receive grants. The money, the funds are coming from housing sales, so to speak. When a person in Illinois sells their house, they have to pay a fee.
A transfer fee.
A transfer fee, an application sort of fund. $9 of that transfer fee will go into the fund. What are your thoughts about that? Is this really going to help with the affordable housing problem in Illinois, especially with the housing market going down?
I don't know how it will be sustained, because many of these programs, especially when they were put forward, which sound wonderful, they do lots of good things for many people. Daycare for children, for everybody, low-income housing for people, get people off the street, health care for everyone, in the perfect world, this would be wonderful. But you also have to be able to pay for these things. Somewhere there's a bill forthcoming, and the state has to pay. I don't know that fund is sustainable under the circumstances. I mean, I look at Medicaid now, and I know how long the state takes, months, in fact, to pay the Medicaid bill to hospitals, to nursing homes, to hospices, to home care workers, So in effect, we're running our social service agency on the backs of the private sector and through the back door by dragging the payment, so we hold it longer, make more interest money, and then pay. So I suspect that it would be something of that nature would go on with low-income housing. But I don't know. See, I've been out for a year.
Yeah, I don't understand what you mean.
You're going to have to be much louder than because I
I
have.
don't understand when you were meeting at that last part with the back door and the interest rate.
Well, the interest rates, because in general, the Fed has lowered the interest rate on investments. So whatever investments the state has in the state treasurer has already said there will be lower income coming in on those. All right. You also have fewer people paying taxes because they're in forfeiture. Their houses are going up. The real estate market is what it is. You're going to have a lot of people who are not paying. You've got various programs that have been put out there that got a lot of hoopla, but are not going to be able to be sustained because there never was anything more than hoopla. And that's kind of bothersome. My feeling always was, if I were governor, if you said you're going to do something, then you got to be able to do it. There is nothing worse than creating an expectation that cannot be met. As my grandmother always said, don't ever pet a dog you can't take home. I believe it.
17 weeks.
Yeah.
Would you support a state income tax increase to pay for all of these programs that we're discussing?
The way we had it worked out in my campaign, we didn't need a state income tax increase. But again, everything went to paying the bills and stabilizing the state. We weren't creating programs out of the blue. That would come later. And so I think, you always, I never took a tax pledge because you never know what's going to happen. And I think people who take a tax pledge are dishonest because they never know what's going to happen. So, there's always that possibility, but, I don't, that's why I'm Republican. I don't like a lot of taxes. I like people to keep as much money in their pockets because I think they're more productive when they keep it and they spend it. By the way, I think this federal grant to stimulate the economy, worthless. All right. There's one for you.
You mentioned a lot of things that are going wrong in Illinois. What's going right in the state?
What's going right? One thing I've liked that the governor has done, and I don't know the intricacies of it because I'd have to be more on the inside to know if there are things that I wouldn't like in there, but I've liked open road tolling. I think the toll roads have done a good job. I don't like the idea that we promised the public that the tollway would someday be a freeway when it was paid off, rather than being used as a collateral for the next tollway. So it never gets paid off. But I think they've done a good job. I don't know that I like the big $500,000 signs over it that says, hey, welcome to open road tolling, Governor Rod Blagojevich every 5 feet. So I don't know, I like that. I think we could have used the money more effectively. So I think that is good. I think a lot has been done, in the private sector in terms of the business community, but I don't think it's been helped by the state. There's many ways that I think we could help the state in terms of investment and so on. And I don't think there's a plan. It's just scattershot, and you need a plan.
Well, let's go this way and then back to you, Tom. I see two hands back here. Yes.
Yeah, I just have a question. This is in regards to education now. We heard about the governor's school budget cuts. What do you think about that? And if you were governor, what take would you have on that? Would there have been reform with the Chicago public school system, or what new ideas would you have brought, or changes?
Yeah, well, we had a whole position paper working with the administrators, working with the IEA, working with the IFT, all the teachers' unions as well, to try and get something. What were the soft spots? How could we improve education in the state? What could we do? I noticed that the teachers in Chicago now are petitioning to get rid of Arnie Duncan, and I see that Paul Vallis is coming back to Chicago to give a speech. So, when you ask about governor, is Paul Vallis going to come back from his job now down in Louisiana, and is he going to come up and run? Who knows? But in terms of what's been done, more money has been put into education, but again, it's been taken out of other funds. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Your educational system is really kind of different. I don't like the No Child Left Behind law, because I think we're educating kids just for testing, and they're missing out on things like civics. They're missing out on music and art and some of the other subjects that I think make life worthwhile. So teacher mentoring, I thought, was very important that we were pushing for, because we have such a turnover of teachers that kids are not getting really good superlative teachers, because they get in, they get dissuaded, they get depressed about what's going on, they walk out, and so on. So if you have the older ones watching the newer ones, kind of keep them in the system, you get some continuity to it. I thought that was important. The fact that we would try to get curricula that was usable. I always thought it was good that we provided bilingual education, because one, I think it's good that Americans can speak more than one language. It's a global economy, but English being primary, obviously, but still, it never hurt that you could speak other languages, encourage it. And so, I thought that was kind of important. As I said, we've had a whole, I'm gone about a year, so I don't have all the intricacies that I would have had a year ago. Yes, ma'am.
Back to McCain, are you going to be working with his Illinois campaign in any way?
I'm having such a hard time hearing your soft spot. See, I have hearing aids. Yeah, very good.
Will you be working with McCain's Illinois
Campaign? Probably I will be working with Illinois campaign. Well, I'm a township committeeman in Riverside Township, so I have 18 precincts that I'm responsible for. We're just a little township, and I have remained as committeeman right straight through, and was even when I ran for governor. Jesse White and I were the only two committeemen and still held office. So, we try and get a vote out. We make sure the sample ballots get out. We make sure we have the judges, and get the signs out, and campaign for him in the ways that you campaign. Make sure that people know what he stands for, what he wants to do, and so on.
One thing that concerns me with McCain, and I want to ask you about this, I've been writing and following this campaign. He's been involved in Reagan. He was a foot soldier during the Reagan administration. But the Reagan administration attacked a lot of social programs and civil rights. And my concern with that, do you think that McCain will do the same during his administration?
I would think that since Reagan, John McCain, by virtue of the experience factor that he has grown and blossomed in the area of civil rights as well as in others. I mean, he has just grown by virtue of being in Congress and dealing with people and so on. So he may have been a foot soldier as a very young man, But obviously 20 years has passed. So 20 years changes you significantly and so on. I can't speak for him exactly what his program is going to be, because for one thing, he is, although he is ahead in the delegate count, he has not been anointed the party candidate. So I'm not getting, you know, all the note cards and the sheets and all the stuff and that we get that what does he stand for and so on. I'm watching what he does and what he says, but I'm sure there is, because I campaigned with him. He was kind enough to come out and campaign with me when I was running for governor. And I will tell you a story about him and Rudy Giuliani, because the two of them came out and campaigned for me, and the differences between the two men. When Giuliani came out, he was, the campaign function was at a golf club. And all he could think about was golfing and the golf course and how wonderful the golf course was. And he got one of those silly phone calls from his wife in the middle of it that I couldn't figure out what that was all about. And yeah, I thought that was kind of stupid. So, you know, that whole business. When McCain came out, we did it in Southern Illinois. And when he came in, the first thing he did was check out the room. He wanted to know who was there, who did, you know, who held office, what they did, what kind of issues were of interest to the people in that area, how they were accomplishing those issues, and so on. There was a genuine hands-on, right away, hit the ground running, and trying to get your hands around it, which I didn't see in a guy like Giuliani. So I think that's a good thing. I think there's a lot of good people running this time around.
Why aren't the conservatives getting this?
You're going to have to do it louder again.
Why aren't the conservatives feeling this?
Well, the conservative feeling is I think he's fine for me. And I really don't like people like Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter and people like that banging on them because for some reason he's not pure enough for them. What do they want? For one thing, if they're so damn good, let them run for public office and quit picking on those who have the guts to go out there and do it. You know, it's real easy to do it from behind a microphone. Real easy. And I happened to tune in and I thought, my goodness, listen to this guy rant. You know, I mean, for heaven's sakes, man, go take a pill or something. You know.
You mentioned McCain, Giuliani, Romney, Hillary Clinton, Huckabee. What about Illinois' junior senator?
Barack Obama is a very nice man. He was well liked in the legislature. I like his wife a lot. She's cool. I mean, I've met her and done some stuff with her. She's very, very bright. I suppose my biggest concern with him is when you ask anybody, what has he done? Which I think, you know, if you ask about any of the others, you can cite something. And the only thing I ever hear coming back at me about what has he done is he gave a great speech at the Democratic Convention, which he did. It was a great speech. But I don't know that that's enough. Hope is a very elusive topic. Change is a very elusive topic. Concepts are interesting, but how does that translate into action in a very hostile world where you really have to know what you're doing and walk very carefully? And, you know, I don't know that he was a great leader down in the legislature. He certainly didn't do anything wrong. I was surprised at the present votes after reading about them that he had cast down there on various issues, though there are reasons for why you sometimes cast present votes. So, you know, that may be there. But he's a very nice man. I think he genuinely wants to do good. And, you know, I like him. I think, you know, I think everybody likes him that came from the legislature.
Tom?
What's your opinion of selling off assets, like the state lottery?
I don't like selling off assets. I'm an old bohemian girl from Berwyn, and you know, you just don't sell off assets. You work off your principal, and you always keep your assets, and you keep your bank account in order. You keep your principal in order. I am, you know, concerned about things like trying to sell off the lottery. I don't think it's a good idea. I came out against that. At one point, you know, there was some concern that the governor was going to sell off the tollway. And that would just gin up the price of transportation for the folks trying to get to and from work. It just, I don't see that. I worry about some of the privatization that we see going on in the city of Chicago.
Right.
You know, I mean, now I don't know the intricacies of it, But I would like to see it proven to me that privatizing Midway Airport is a good thing. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've never seen the pro and the con played out. I just see that the mayor wants to do it. This is how much money he could get for it. You have to have X number of airlines agree to it. Fine. What's the downside? I've not seen anything, and as journalists, you may want to explore that for the dumbbells like me who'd like to read about it and see that.
Anyone else? We have a question here, Nadia. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering if
Now you got to talk really loud. I've got hearing aids. Long story, but I have
Yeah, stand up. Stand
bad
up and
surgery in
belt
the
it out.
first, blew out my hearing. So you got, I need help. You know,
Okay.
try to scream at me.
I was just wondering if you thought there was a possibility that in November Illinois would vote to the Republican candidate.
I don't know. Illinois could certainly go for a John McCain. I think he brings much to the table in terms of just having served a long time, having had a varied experience factor. They all bring something to the table, every one of them. I mean, we had some interesting candidates this time who, you know, I suppose if you put them all into a blender, you'd really get something phenomenal. But that's not the way people come. You know, we all come with our shortcomings and so on. In the type of world that we have, I think a John McCain will sell. I think people still have a security problem after 9/11, that has not settled down. Just because we haven't been attacked doesn't mean we won't be. I think some of the things that we've seen in government in terms of rights of privacy, military tribunals, things of this sort, waterboarding, he has taken an anti-torture. Of all people, he should. I mean, this guy has been tortured. He understands what it is and has taken a flat-out no on it, which I think is a very good thing, because in my campaign, I had people come up to me and say, we're not going to vote for you because you're a Republican and you torture people. It's like, I have nobody chained in my basement. Trust me, I just, didn't do it. But, so it is an issue. And so I think he does, he is viable in the state. There's, he could carry here, but, we've seen Illinois go Democratic before. We have no constitutional officers now that I'm gone who are Republican. You have a very strong Democratic, I won't say a machine because that's not quite a machine, but it's close to a machine in the city of Chicago. When Cook County can elect a Todd Stroger over and above some of the other folks who were running, who probably bought more of the table, there's obviously a strong Democratic functioning there. So it could go either way. But Democrats obviously have the edge.
We have just about run out of time.
Okay, and you all had the right to escape. You chose to stay. It's your own fault.
And I thought those were really terrific questions. I thought those were very, very good. And Judy, thank you for coming by.
Thank you. And I do
really
this, I have to
appreciate it.
tell you, for your great Professor Tom Lowe.
Thank you.